Right there. How you guys doing? Just getting ready to get started here. We're going to be tasting through some tequila. I've got a nice announcement I want to tell everybody about. There's going to be, I think you're all going to enjoy this one, especially if you think you might want to participate. There is a chance to win some actual money. I'm doing something really cool. I'm going to announce it at some point during this live. I just want to get a couple more people in here and we can get going. I'm going to grab myself a water because I need to start talking, warming myself up, a little bit, get hyped, get interested, and we're gonna taste through some tequila. I want to talk about some cachaça and some other rum stuff. So we got a lot of fun stuff that we got planned for today. Just waiting for a couple more folks to show up. Please don't leave. I'm just grabbing some water. You should make a cocktail book with all your recipes. I would love to do that, and depending on how this year goes, I might actually be working on that. There's a lot of other stuff happening right now behind the scenes. So this year is shaping up to be probably the most insane year of my life. But without saying too much, I do want to make a cocktail book. What are the plans for today? Well, I have an announcement I want to tell everybody about. It's a chance for you guys, part of the audience, to win some money. It's part of the announcement of what it is that we are, what I want to be announcing. That was the world's worst sentence. We're going to be drinking some tequila. I have some interesting stuff to talk about. And then we're going to talk about some cachaça and some rums. And then, my plan is to go live for like an hour or so. I do have some other content I need to film today because it's a busy, busy week. But give me a second. I'm just grabbing a water and I'll be right back. I should have done this before. I'm sorry. Don't leave. But so I got some new rum this week actually, and I really want to talk about it because something super funny happened yesterday. Chris Lopez, I currently bartend at a country club, and I'm excited to test one of your cocktails. Oh, I love that, man, love it. Were you a voice actor? No, but if that's a compliment that I could do that, I would. I'd love that. Thank you for that. That was really nice. Charanda? No, so this is not charanda. I actually got this bottle last week, and it's really fascinating because I guess yesterday was National Bottled in Bond Day here in America, which is a law that was passed in I think the early 1900s that basically it made sure that whiskey producers had to follow a certain set of laws when making their whiskey so that they weren't cutting corners and making a ton of money off of people just selling bad, crappy whiskey. So they created a law called the Bottle and Bond Act. And so that basically meant that for you to label something as bottled in bond, Leandro from The Educated Barfly did an incredible video that he posted yesterday that really goes through the details of it. But if I'm not mistaken, it's something like it has to be from the same harvest, in the same harvest season, in the same distillery, and it's bottled at a certain thing or whatever, right? So it's very meticulous is the whole point, and it's to ensure that the whiskey is of the best quality. And so I found it fascinating that Privateer, they are a rum brand here from Massachusetts. They just released a new rum that is bottled in bond. So I think it's really fascinating because sometimes the rum is like the wild, wild west. And Dave in the comments saying 50% and 4-year minimum. Yes, those are two that I did forget. I just wanted to get people to go over to Leandro's video too. He did a really good job of explaining it. But yes, those are very important as well. But I found this fascinating because they now released a rum, an American rum, that is bottled in bond. So it was from the same harvest, 50%. It was 4-year minimum in aged in barrels, and it's really fascinating, very tasty, and I want to taste that soon. So you guys are all here. I think there's a lot of you here, so we can actually go through the announcement. The first big announcement is that for those of you guys who were part of the live last week, I talked about a newsletter that we were thinking about releasing, right? And we released it last Friday, the first edition. Wow, my hair is all over the place. Shit, sorry guys. The first edition went out last Friday. And maybe you're thinking, oh, Louis, wow, really? That was your big announcement? No, the big announcement is that we're running a cocktail contest. I'm running a cocktail contest. It's not sponsored by anybody. It's me. I'm putting it on, and it's open to all of you guys. To enter, what I'm asking for is an original cocktail that is using a South or Latin American spirit, or flavor, actually. It doesn't necessarily have to be a South or Latin American spirit. It has to have a South or Latin American flavor. And I'm going to go through all of these submissions over the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to give the winner $500. I know it's not much. I am not rich. I'm trying I want to do something fun for the community and really grow a community sense here. And then my goal is to take the 5 finalists of this contest and make a whole video going through each of the cocktails and explaining each one to the audience and kind of giving a shout out to everybody who participated. So I'm going to announce the details on my Instagram and on YouTube and on TikTok later today or tomorrow. And we will be announcing all of the details. And once I get all of that ready to go, we will be releasing it this week. So I just wanted to give you guys the first news because I think it's going to be a really fun time. And I'm really excited to see the creativity out in the audience. And so it'll be, you'll have to submit the specs for the cocktail, a photo and how to make it, and subscribe to the newsletter because that's why we're doing this, to promote the launch of the newsletter. And with this newsletter, it's not like more stuff about me. I want to make it very clear. I'm not just trying to get you guys to subscribe to some emails so I can send you, ads or whatever. The idea behind this newsletter is to create a real community feeling. It's to be highlighting stuff that's going on in the online spirits and cocktail world, talking about cool stuff that is happening within other creator spaces, maybe within the bar world, within restaurant stuff, stuff that all has to do with this industry that we're all part of, whether you're just a home enthusiast who enjoys spirits or if you work in a bar or restaurant. So it's not just another avenue to sell you or serve you ads or whatever. But if you guys want to subscribe to the newsletter to be put ahead of time on this, the link is in my Instagram bio. In the YouTube, I will link it in my bio as well. But I think it's like ingoodspirits.be. Anyway, just go on my Instagram bio and it's there. And then in the meantime, let's answer some questions. If you guys are interested in submitting a cocktail, just write down below in the comments. Yes, I can't wait to submit it because I just want to see how many of you actually want to participate. We've got a good amount of people live right now. I just want to see if you guys think it's a good idea. All right, let's get through some questions and then we can go through some tastings. I saw some of you guys asking some interesting stuff. All right. Cool. Just going through some questions here. Yeah. Sarah says, I'm intrigued. I'll have to see what I can come up with. So yeah, it's probably gonna be like a 2-week window for submissions. I'm actually going on vacation next week. But then, we'll have until the end of next week probably to submit. So it'll be a really fun way to just kind of like engage with you guys and being able to like play around with the different ideas that you have. So I'm excited to have you guys submit your cocktails. I'm really pumped for that. Ice Cold says, have you ever been to any bars in NC? I'm assuming you mean North Carolina. I have not, but a friend of mine, she runs, oh my gosh, I'll have to remember the name of the cocktail bar down there. It's in Charlotte, but I'm having a hard time remembering what it is. But yeah. Alex, what's the best mezcal to drink? The one that you enjoy the most. All right, so let's talk about something fun that I discovered recently. And then we'll come back. So this is kind of funny because I literally I've done this on a live before where we tasted through the spirits from the same distillery. So these are all tequilas that were all made at 1579, which is El Pandillo, which I've talked about a lot. They make really good stuff. But what I want to talk about today is really funny. Well, not really funny. I don't know if it's funny or not. I think it's interesting. One of these brands, I just did a video. I recorded it. It's edited. It's ready to go on my YouTube channel. I haven't posted it yet. Chug one, you won't. Do you want to see me on a live on this video? Because that would probably be what happened. Which would be really mean of you, to be perfectly honest with you. So one thing that I just found out recently is that one of these brands will not be produced at El Pandillo anymore. And I found out that Primo is not going to be produced there, which is really funny because this video that I did, it was talking about what was the difference between all these brands made at the same distillery. And I found out that they're actually moving out of El Pandillo to somewhere else, which I don't know anything about this new distillery. And what I find fascinating is that the brand was started by Felipe Camarena, who's the master distiller at El Pandillo. He's one of his cousins, and now he's not going to be making tequila there any longer, which interesting, right? Like maybe there, I don't know the details of what happened, but you know, they were family, and now he's just not going to be part of that anymore, which is really interesting. So I wonder what that'll mean for the quality of the bottles of Primo that they produce, because I liked Primo a lot. I thought that it was a really good showcase of what was being done at El Pandillo, and now unfortunately it won't be made there, which I wonder what that'll mean for like if it changes the product, right? So just keep an eye on that. So if like you buy a bottle of Primo, take a look at it and see what distillery is listed at the on the gnome, right? So this one's still $15.79. This is actually a special edition bottle that I have. Something that I find fascinating. But while we're here, what I find really interesting is that all four of these brands are made at El Pandillo, which is really, really important big distillery in, I don't know how big it is, but it's important because they make really good stuff down in Mexico. And the big difference is the different sources of water. And what's really interesting is that tequila is made from one species of plant made in a relatively similar way from one another. There's not all that much difference that you can do into the production of tequila. A lot of it follows a very similar trajectory path, if you will. One of the big things that actually plays a huge role in the final flavor of any bottled tequila is the water source. You crush the agave, you got to mix it with water before you ferment it, and that water really makes a huge difference in the final product. And what they do at El Pandillo, they have three types of water source. They have a collected rainwater. They collect rainwater on their roof and use that. They have a natural spring water, and they have oh my gosh, I have it written down somewhere. And the other one was like a stream, I believe, or a well water. Sorry, well water. Their collected rainwater, and then they have spring water as well. So each one will have different flavors, because you may think of water as this like neutral thing that doesn't taste like much, but you'd be wrong. Water does have a flavor, and water from different sources has different flavors. And so what they do is they kind of mix different types of water to make each one. So Chris Garner asked, what's the cocktail competition? The cocktail competition is, I'm going to be asking folks this week and next week to be submitting an original cocktail that uses a South or Latin American flavor in it as a focus. And I'm going to be picking 5 finalists. I will then make them in a video and announce a winner, and the winner will get $500. It's going to be a way to really kind of engage you guys in the community, and I want to do more of that to get more people interested in doing this. So I will be announcing it officially, either today or tomorrow on my Instagram, on YouTube, and on TikTok. And once that's live, there'll be a submission form online. And it's not sponsored by anybody. It's sponsored by me. I'm just asking that you guys subscribe to my newsletter, because we just launched it last week. And it's not a newsletter to just sell you something. It's for the community about the things that I think a lot of people will care about. And I have a writer, and I'm really excited about the project, and I'm super pumped about it. But yes, back to talking about booze. Sarah McCoy says, minerality would be completely different. Very cool. Exactly. So there are certain different elements that each water will kind of impart on that final flavor, which is why each of these expressions tastes very different from one another, even though they're made in the same place. How does one subscribe to the newsletter, Louis? On my Instagram link in bio, there's a link that says subscribe to the newsletter. I will throw it into should have done it before on YouTube, but if you're on TikTok, if you go on my website, I don't think it's there either. But if you go on my Instagram, the link is there. I will put it in the comments below as well. Ice Cold asks, how far is your bar from Boston? Probably like no traffic, like 35 minutes, 40 minutes roughly. Yeah. So what was interesting, kind of recapping, is that now Primo is not going to be made at El Pandillo any longer, which is really interesting. Anyway. I wanted to talk about this bottle of rum that I was talking about earlier. This is a Privateer's Bottled in Bond True American Rum, and we're going to taste through it because I think this is really tasty stuff. And I love the fact that they are, on the bottle, they're putting Bottled in Bond, which is a really good call to all the whiskey lovers who will see that and think, wait a second, that's a whiskey? It looks nice. And then they go and figure it out that it's actually a rum. I was having conversations with quite a few different people recently about what do we think the next it spirit is going to be? Because for the, let's call it like from 2013, 2012 to, to 2020, it was all about bourbon. Like it was big bourbon boom. Like all of these great small distilleries were starting to make really nice stuff. And then it was everything about bourbon, right? And then I would say that maybe for the last 4 years, if not a little bit more, like maybe from 2018 now, like the shift has been really talking about like agave products. Like tequila is really the it spirit at the moment. And it will have its time. You know what I mean? I think that some interesting things have been happening in the tequila space. I think there's way too many brands out there right now. I think just in like Tequila Matchmaker's database, they are, I think there's over 3,000 something brands, and that doesn't include all of them. So there's a ton of brands out there, and I don't know how sustainable all these brands are, because I think they're just trying to really pump out as much stuff as possible to make as much money as possible while there is a tequila boom. So I think that I've spoken to a couple people about this in the industry. I don't know. I'm not saying I have inside knowledge at all. I'm just saying I think that there's going to be quite a few brands who maybe don't exist in a year or two, because I think that there was just way too much being produced, and I don't think it's hard to see, right? I think even as like you walk through certain liquor stores or whatever, you see these like shelves lined full of brands that you might have never even heard of, and I think that there is a limit to how many new brands can be made. You know what I mean? Without people just being like, I don't think we need this, right? So I do think that soon tequila might have this like not a tipping point, because I don't think tequila's popularity is ever actually going to die down. I think it's way too popular for it to just not be popular anymore. But I do believe that Boss Wine guy says, yeah, consolidation is inevitable. I mean, like any industry, it's going to happen, right? Like it's going to happen. And so I think that maybe that there will be a new spirit that will become the it spirit. And I've talked with some other friends and creators, and they think that rum is the next big it spirit. But there is one thing that I think is holding back rum, and that is with tequila or with bourbon, there is a universal language of quality. You kind of know what makes, like there are relative quantifiable ways to be able to have a language that you and I could use to talk about whether or not a spirit is good or bad, right? I think that is really important, because without that, you have no ability to like have a consensus or have a community around it in a way. And with rum, I think that what's wild about it is that rum is made in almost every country on the planet, right? It's one of the most widely produced spirits in the world. And so with that, every country kind of makes it differently. So you have, Haitian Clarin is made very different than Jamaican rum. And then you have, like Privateer is made here in Massachusetts, and they use their grade A molasses or whatever. And it's very different than like cachaça in Brazil. And then there is, sugarcane distillates being made in Africa that get their, inspiration, I believe, from either like France or Portugal or a lot of the colonizing countries there. And so their rum is vastly different than rum made literally anywhere else in the world. So that's what makes, I think, the ability to grow community around rum, it's both exciting, but also I think a little daunting, because until people really kind of have that collective language where they can use it to describe if a rum is good or not, I think that it might be difficult for rum to really like grab hold of the market. There's a lot of people who are very anti like added sugar in rums, which is another big thing, because we talk a lot about additives in tequila. There are additives in other spirits and other industries as well. And so one of the things that I find fascinating is that a lot of people like to complain about like Tequila Matchmaker, or people who are like trying to talk about additives in tequila. But if you look at it, like tequila is one of the most transparent spirits on the planet, because that exists. But you don't have similar organizations doing work with rum. There's a couple of places for like rum reviews online where there's like small communities of people talking about it. But I think it makes it hard, because you can kind of, in a way, compare different tequila brands to one another if you know the what makes it special or interesting, right? Whereas if you try to do that without enough knowledge in rum, you might pour, let's say you put together like, you know, these four right here are all technically rum, but they are vastly different from one another on a crazy level. So you have a very funky aged Jamaican rum that is like 54%, 57% ABV. You have, a newer like American rum, whatever that means. This one is 50% ABV. It's bottled in bond, so that's a whole other thing. And then you have Paranubes, which is a Mexican rum made from freshly pressed sugarcane juice. But this is also funky because it's 54% ABV and it's very vegetal. It's very grassy. It's this really interesting thing. You have rum agricole, which is from freshly pressed sugarcane rum as well. But then it has its own set of standards. And so while these four bottles of rum are all rum, they are almost within subsections of themselves, because being able to compare and talk about that is interesting, right? Like, it's difficult to really compare it because they're not the same. They are made from a similar base product, but so much of it happens to then change. And someone's asking in the comments, so we'll talk about it as well. And then if you want to throw a real big hitch in it, like, this is charanda. It's a Mexican rum made in Michoacan, and it has its own denomination of origin. So there's its own level and layer of like quality standards, and they're a little bit different than talking about other rums, and it's like, it's a very interesting Richard, you're actually very wrong, sir. There's not just only one rum. There's one charanda, but there is it literally says Mexican rum. It's made in Oaxaca. So no, you're wrong. Sorry. But yeah, so anyway, it's very different. So it's like, I think rum has that. It's a little bit tougher to really like compare them, because they taste very differently, And it's like, if I were to taste through these five right here, like, they would have very different tasting notes, which it's a good thing. I think that it means that there's a lot of fun that can be had with rum, and I think that at the same time that I think rum could definitely be the next it spirit. I think there is a lot of learning that will need to happen before we can actually really dive into rum as a collective group or community, if you will. There's plenty of people trying, I'll tell you that right now. What is the name of the blue rum? It is charanda, which is the type of rum. It's a Mexican rum, and then the brand is Uruapan. They make some really great stuff, and I highly recommend this, as well as some of their other stuff as well. Cool, guys. Well, if we're going to talk about rum, I can't talk about rum without talking about the national spirit of Brazil, which is cachaça, which is a whole other thing. So if you're talking about Joey L, how long ago did Privateer come out with that bottle? I think this year sometime, maybe the last several weeks, or maybe at the end of last year. Yeah, but you literally said it's the only rum. Yeah, if you added after, at least I can think of, sure, but you only said that after. But yeah, anyway, whatever. So cachaça. Cachaça is, again, following along the same conversation about rums and how rum is different. You have Brazil's national spirit, which is cachaça. It is a freshly pressed sugarcane rum. So it's just... Yeah, sorry, just reading through some things. So cachaça is made from freshly pressed sugarcane juice. So you take a fresh sugarcane, you press it, a lot of liquid comes out. It's got a really nice, sweet, delicious flavor. It's a little earthy, a little grassy, and that then gets turned into cachaça. And cachaça is very special because cachaça is the only spirit on the planet that can be aged in 28 different kinds of wood. And these different kinds of woods are indigenous to Brazil. Now, the problem with that is that there's 28 different kinds of wood, but 14 of the woods or trees that the wood comes from are extinct or near extinction, and so they're protected. And then another 7, I believe, are endangered, and only like 7 of them are really used frequently. Rob Balaz, 51 is the only cachaça I can get, except store that has a Germana Sol. Say state of cachaça affairs here. That's sad because 51 is awful. I would go with the Germana Sol over 51 every day of the week. I mean, I have Germanas Palia, which is really nice too. It's aged in balsam wood. So yeah, so as we're talking about different kinds of wood that can be used for aging cachaça, this one is aged in rum or in former bourbon barrels for 1 year. This one is aged in former bourbon barrels for 2 years. This one is aged for 1 year in Amburana wood, which is a very popular wood in cachaça production. And it's now finding its way into bourbon production and even tequila production, which is both exciting and scary. And so I know most of you guys don't really care too much about cachaça, but I find this conversation fascinating because recently I got my hands on a bottle of a tequila that was aged in Amburana. And Joey L, is Novo Fogo the only brand to still use Araribá wood? Man, as far as brands that export, yes, I believe they are because I don't know of any other ones that export. Now, in Brazil, is there someone who's probably using it to make cachaça? There probably, hopefully, I hope they do because it means that there's really cool stuff out there. But we can talk about that in a moment. So then, Amburana wood is a wood from Brazil that has a very natural sweetness to it. It's nutty. It's how else would I describe it? It has like a perceived sweetness to it. It's a little nutty and it's like light. It's really nice. Connor Flynn, what do you think of Arete Blanco being priced 2 times higher than the Repo? Are you sure you're trying the Arete, the budget one? Because the budget one's like $22. They have their artisanal line, which is more expensive, but their Blanco, their regular Blanco and their regular Repo are like $23 a liter. Their artisanal is a little bit more expensive, but they should be the same price, the Repo and their Blanco from the budget line. So anyway, Amburana it's a really nice wood. It's the second most used wood in cachaça aging. Number 1 being former bourbon barrels. And a fun fact for anybody who cares about aging spirits, one thing that's really funny is that there is both a shortage of barrels for all of the producers on the planet right now, and also something very funny that is always feeding the market, which is the bourbon market. So bourbon is giant. It's a giant industry. Tons of people who make bourbon in the US. Lots of bourbon gets made, lots of bourbon gets consumed. One law that is kind of feeding the ecosystem is the fact that for something to be labeled a bourbon, it can only be aged in freshly charred, new American oak barrel. So every single time a bourbon is made, it can't be a used barrel. So what happens is they age their bourbon. Now they don't have a use for that barrel any longer. It's for them, it's useless for the bourbon producer because not useless because they can use it to make other spirits, but maybe they don't want to. And so they have all these barrels because what if they only make bourbon, right? They're gonna have all these barrels left over. And so what ends up happening is you have a lot of these bourbon producers, they then start exporting their barrels to all of the other parts of the world. So some of it will go down to Mexico. Most of it will go down to Mexico and age tequila. Some of it will make its way down to Brazil to be used to age cachaça. Some of it goes over to the UK and to Scotland. Some of it goes to all across the world, right? So it's funny because there was a shortage of barrels because there's so many brands producing good quality spirits today that it's so much demand to get these barrels, but yet there's something that is naturally always producing these barrels for the market, which is the American bourbon market, which is really cool. It's just a funny little side note. So the barrel that is most used, the type of wood that is most used to age cachaça is oak, which is what bourbon is aged in. So a lot of it becomes ex-bourbon barrels, but then the second most popular wood to age cachaça is Amburana, which is what we have right in front of me. Where's my water? Here it is. Eric Franklin says, makes more sense since we are seeing more scotches that aren't heavily aged and are instead just aged 8 to 12 years in barrels used for other spirit aging. So I think that is interesting because I think there's just so much appetite for really cool spirits at the moment. So there are a lot of brands that are just trying to release cool, different, interesting stuff, and I think that's really good for the industry. One thing that's really I always find fascinating about aging is that depending on where you are aging your spirit, it can take less time or more time. So if we think of aging solely as the amount of time something sits in a barrel, so a lot of times you'll have like a 10-year-old bourbon. 10 years in a barrel in like rainy, cold Scotland is very different than 10 years in a barrel in, let's say, in Mexico or in the rainforest of Brazil. So climate and temperature actually really impacts the final, how long it takes to age a spirit. I know that sounds counterintuitive because of the word aging, but don't think it's not a human. You know what I mean? It's not growing up like a kid. It's not, it's how much time it's sitting in a barrel and having flavors be imparted on it from the walls and the inside of the barrel. So climate plays a huge role in that. So you have, the reason why it's like, oh, this was only aged for 2 years, but that's still a dark color. You know what I mean? Like it's not a light color. It's a very dark color. But of course, 2 years in a barrel in Brazil is very different than like 10 years in a barrel in Scotland. You know, so that is important. So these two bottles right in front of me. Amburana has an amazing flavor that it imparts on cachaça. It is what, like I said, the second most popular type of wood used to age cachaça, and now other industries are starting to get in on it, and that's kind of a double-edged sword. There are a couple of brands of bourbon that are now using Amburana barrels to finish their whiskey. So I know Penelope has a couple of expressions, and someone always, every time I talk about it, someone tells me the other brand and I never remember. But then you also have a brand like Paladar, which is a tequila that is now being used. It's aging. It's being aged in Amburana barrels. Lucky 7, that's the other brand that is using Amburana barrels in their production. And so Paladar is made by the same folks who make Arete. So it's made at the same distillery, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And so it's a really cool thing. I think it's a very fascinating way because, you know, a lot of times we talk about like tequila is made from one species of plant, the blue arbor agave. It, you know, is usually cooked in similar methods. So a lot of the big differences really come from the water source. But then what if you use other barrels or other woods to really change it? Now all of a sudden you have a whole new way to experiment, right? Which is great. That's a really exciting aspect because now all of a sudden you have brands like this which are making aged expressions that are using different kinds of woods. And that's good to a degree, but Amburana is also not the most environmentally friendly to harvest. Obviously, I believe it just got onto the endangered part of the list of woods used to age cachaça. And so there's a huge worry about if more people start loving the flavor of Amburana, and if more people start to use it in the production of their spirits, it's going to cause a problem in the, what's it called? The environment. It'll cause people to cut down more trees to make more barrels, and it could really be an existential problem for both the, you know, our climate, the world, and also like it might just become extinct because too many people harvest it. So it's like, on the one hand, I love that people are experimenting. I love that they're making really cool stuff with different influences from other parts of the world, and it's like really geeky, nerdy shit that I could sit here and talk about for hours, which is great. But then there's also the side of like, well, that also poses a problem, right? So I actually have a whole video that I did on my YouTube channel last year where I went down to visit Novo Fogo's distillery. I saw how they go through the whole process. I showed all their different environmentally focused initiatives. They have a reforestation project, which I got to participate in and plant a tree. And it was really near and dear to my heart because it was being back in my country, getting to contribute positively to a project within the bar world that I'm a big part of, or I consider myself a part of, not a big part of. I'm not a big part of this world. That's just a misconception on my, misspeaking on my part. I love being a part of this industry of being part of this online like spirits world, and getting to go down there and like see how spirits made was really great, and then getting to participate in a project that was like planting trees that were native to the area and really trying to reforest the area was really special. So if you want to watch that, it's on my YouTube channel. There's a whole video there. I think the video is called like how you'll be able to find it. It's not that hard. There's a rainforest in the background. And actually, I have another video from that trip coming out in a couple of weeks, just finishing the final touches on it. I got to actually create the menu for a really awesome concert that they threw in the middle of the jungle. So that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and I can't wait for you guys to see that one because I worked very hard on that video. It's been like over a year in the making. So then, anyway, back to the 2 bottles in front of me because I just got reading to a comment and got a little confused. So what does this taste like, right? So like, what's the difference between like a regular aged spirit versus one that's aged in Amburana? So for funsies, we can do a 3-part tasting. I just gotta find a regular reposado tequila somewhere that I have. Where would be a good one? I wish I had a arete repo to taste it, but whatever. We'll just go from here. So we'll taste first I'm trying to figure out which way to go. Maybe we'll do Amburana first, then we'll do tequila first. So let's go. Drew X says alcoholic demon. It's really nice of you. So let's taste through the Cimarron first, because that'll be a regular reposado, right? So we'll be able to, compare that with the Amburana aged tequila. What's cool about this bottle is that it's got like just a regular little stopper in it, which I find nice. All right, so on my left here, your right? No, I guess that's left for you too, if you're watching. This is just a regular reposado tequila. I'm going to have Cimarron. I wish I had arete repo for this. I don't. And then we have the Paladar, which is a Amburana aged tequila. And then we have Novo Fogo's Colibri, which is an Amburana aged cachaça. And then we'll taste this one. So, very fresh roasted agave flavor. It's got it's a little earthy. It's got nice spice to it. A little citrus. Really tasty, with the agave flavor is very prominent. But of course, you get a lot of the barrel notes, which comes from an ex-bourbon barrel, probably, most likely. So you get a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of like that like nice mouthfeel. And so how does that compare to a tequila that's aged in Amburana? Well, you still get some incredible cooked agave flavor, but Amburana has this almost like cinnamony aftertaste, and it's like a little perceived sweetness, a little nutty, and like cinnamony. So it's like different spices than you might kind of taste in like an aged tequila. But of course, this also has the unmistakable agave flavor, and it just has that layer of like nuttiness and like almost cinnamony over the top. And then, but where does that come from? It's the wood that it was aged in, the Amburana wood. And to compare that, we now have the Novo Fogo Colibri, which was aged in Amburana. So, obviously, cachaça and tequila, very different in terms of their raw like what is the input, right? So agave versus sugarcane. But one thing they have in common is they do share some similarities in taste in terms of being earthy and grassy. So some agave has, I mean, it's spent 6 to 8 years in the ground. It's going to have some of those earthy vegetal flavors. It's literally a vegetable. I'm pretty sure. I think, or a fruit. Oh, that's a good question. Is agave a vegetable or fruit or just like grass? I don't know. I'm not a tree expert. I poison people for a living, so I don't know. But sugarcane is kind of like a grass. So Dave says a succulent. I didn't realize that was a category. So we're gonna go with what he's saying. It's a succulent. I thought succulents were just a type of plant, but it shows how much I know. And sugarcane is like a grass. It's kind of like bamboo. It's like so it has those like grassy vegetal flavors. And so it's actually really cool where they do have some similarities, which is different than, say, a whiskey that comes from a grain. So that is, it's going to have a vastly different flavor profile than something that like a sugarcane or agave, right? And so I think that's somewhere where they have a lot of similarities. And I always tell people, like, if you like tequila and you enjoy that like grassy vegetal flavor, some really good, well-made cachaças is not a bad bridge because they do have those flavor profiles in common. So if you guys are interested and you want to branch out and try some cool stuff, I think that exploring a little bit of cachaça after you like, if you like tequila, I think exploring some cachaça is a really fun way to get into rums. Or there's other sugarcane based rums that I think do fit that criteria as well, but I just love cachaça because I'm Brazilian and that's what I love. And so what's really cool is doing this taste test. It's like, okay, cool. You have an aged tequila that is aged in former bourbon barrels. You're going to get that raw agave. You're going to get some of that, the barrel flavor. It's going to have, that vanilla, caramel, butterscotch flavor from those barrels. Then you have this tequila and then over here you have a cachaça, which is a vastly different spirit that is aged in amburana. So it has grassy, fresh, sharp flavors from the sugarcane, with some of that vegetal grassiness, and then it's aged in amburana wood, which it has this nice perceived sweetness, this nuttiness to it, a little bit of cinnamon, and then you have paladar right in the middle here, which is a tequila that has the elements of a tequila. It has the raw, like that roasted agave flavor, the those earthy vegetal flavors from the agave itself. But then you get some of the cinnamon, some of the nuttiness, some of that perceived sweetness from the amburana. So fascinating use of barrel aging, which I think is really, really cool. Now, if you want to take this a step above and you want to like talk about making cocktails, right? So I know it's not everybody in the community that is here that like is a bartender or makes drinks, but every single expression, it has a different flavor. So it's not like you can use, if a recipe says like, oh, just use aged tequila, you might get away with it, but it's like, if you find a recipe and it's like, okay, use amburana aged cachaça, you can't just swap in a balsam wood aged cachaça and expect it to taste the same, because those flavors are vastly different, and they won't play the same in a cocktail. So, could you make something new if you were like, oh, cool, replace the aged tequila with a amburana aged tequila? Now all of a sudden a whole other flavor profile opens itself up to you because of the flavor profile of the amburana wood. So that's something that I find fascinating in building cocktails, is like just the different, like every different wood will impact the final flavor. So it's like, I have cocktails on my menu that blend two different kinds of cachaça that are both used to age, two different woods that were used to age cachaça are different, but then they come together and you can make a really fun flavor profile. And each time you can just play with, it's another tool to play with in your arsenal, right? I think that's really cool. Cool. Anyway, I'm trying to think of what else we can. Oh, let's continue to talk about cachaça because I didn't really go through it, right? So, right in front of me here, we have. I'm going to move these to the side so I can drink them later. We have just 4 different expressions of cachaça, and each one was a different barrel, a different type of wood that was used to age this. So, you have here just regular old oak. This is a former bourbon barrel, so it's going to have a lot of those similar profiles that you might be accustomed to from drinking like aged tequila or aged whiskey. Then you have this one that's Amburana. We talked enough about Amburana in the last half hour. And then you have two really fun ones. So this one right here is the Graciosa, and this is used to aid. Comes from Brazil nuts, the big brown walnuts that you might see. They're called Brazil nuts. This comes from the wood of that tree. So this has a very different flavor profile. It's very nutty. It's butterscotchy in its flavor. It's really good. Possibly one of my favorite cachaças I've ever tried. And then you have the really funky one that I always like to show people because it's the one that's just the most striking. So just look at the color differences of these cachaças, right? So this right here is the natural color of the spirit after it comes off of the wood, or out of the wood barrel. And this was a barrel that is made with zebra wood, which is a wood that was very popular in furniture making for a very long time. But today it is a near extinct type of wood. It's very protected in Brazil, so you can't cut down a tree to make barrels of it anymore. But these guys, Novo Fogo, they were able to make a barrel because they have a lot of partners with a lot of land. They have a reforestation project, and they plant different native trees on all these properties, and then they will replant them in the forest. And they had a partner who had a shed that was made of Riley Thompson. We'll get to the big announcement in just a little bit. I did it earlier, and I'll recap for those of you who have joined recently. They were able to make two barrels using zebra wood, and that's how they get this really deep red color. And this is very fruity. It's very different. There's a lot of cinnamon notes to it. It's just very, very different than anything I've ever tried. Connor Flynn, I'm not sure about specifics, but can you make an old fashioned with any aged spirit? Yes. An old fashioned, while it is a recipe, it's also a template. So you can make old fashions with any aged spirit. You can make old fashions without aged spirits, but I think that they do taste better when using an aged spirit. There's lots of different variations. You can make cachaça old fashions, you can make tequila old fashions, you can make mezcal old fashions, you can make old fashions out of literally anything. And it's a really fun thing that you can kind of build on. So yeah, and I think that like a lot of times when we talk about spirits, people like to talk about like with bourbon and whiskey, the big thing that's talked about is the mash bill. What are the different kinds of grains used to make that whiskey, right? Which is interesting. It does impact the flavor, right? So with bourbon, it's at least 60% corn. With rye, it's at least a 41%, 51%, whatever it is, whatever. You know what I mean. Bourbon, more corn. Rye, more rye. So and then it's like, oh, how much of wheat did you use, or is it a wheated bourbon? Is it is there all the different parts of the mash bill will make the end product taste different. And so that's one tool that you can change up how you make a spirit taste different, right? So the other one is the wood, because in America it's almost all American oak, especially with bourbon companies. That's kind of what it needs to be. For bourbon, it needs to be oak, right? But with other spirits, it's and with tequila, it's like, what's the water source? Is it open air fermentation? Are you using what method of cooking are you using? Is it Tahona crushed? Is it shredded? Those will matter, but like the big difference is the water source. And then with cachaça, it is of course the how cleanly you make the cachaça, how well you're producing it. But then the added layer is like the different kinds of wood, which I think is just a whole other fun thing in and of itself to be able to change it up. And whereas with gin, it's like, what botanicals are you using to make gin? So those are a little bit different. So anyway, the whole point of this is to show you that it's like each spirit has its own way of being different and being able to play with it, right? So and like every spirit has its own method that it needs to be made and what makes it different. So yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And I think that, what started out, and the stuff that I love is like innovation, right? So you have industries that have been operating in one specific way for a very long time, and then all of a sudden they learn something from another region of the world or another way that people are using spirits, and then all of a sudden it becomes something else that they can use. And so that's kind of the example of, you have a Amburana aged tequila because they got in touch with the people who make cachaça, and they got a barrel of Amburana wood and were able to use it to age tequila. So it's just a fun experiment. You have some tequila brands that are aging their tequila in former wine barrels, and that's creating a fun little play as well. It's not nothing new, but it's just like, trying little different things. And yeah, I just think it's like a really fun thing to play with. All right, friends, people keep asking about the announcement. For those of you who have been around for the whole live, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I've been trying to do more of these. I find it really fun. I'm a little tired today, so I was like, I need to go live to just like wake myself up. And the announcement that someone was asking about is I'm running a cocktail contest. It's not sponsored. It is not sponsored by anyone. It is sponsored by me. It's a way to engage with our community, you folks who follow me and watch these videos and really enjoy it. And the contest is I'm going to be giving away $500 to the winner. And what you have to do to enter is create a original cocktail using a South or Latin American flavor. That can be a South Latin American spirit. It can use a South Latin American ingredient, something along those lines. I just want to put some stipulation to make the creative juices flow. And you'll have to subscribe to my newsletter. Now, I don't want you guys to be scared because it's not a newsletter where I'm just going to be trying to sell you something. The idea behind this newsletter is it's for the community. It's whether you are a enthusiast at home, a bartender, someone who enjoys just cocktail making or cocktail content. The idea will be that we are always just going to be every week. It's free, and every week you'll be getting the latest news, the trends. We'll talk about cool stuff happening in the industry. Last week we did 3 articles. One of them was on Steve the bartender, who was an OG of the YouTube bartending world. He had open heart surgery last year, and so he had been away for several months. He just posted his first video back after his surgery. And so we talked about that in one article. The other article, we actually went over the whole batanga trend that we all did a couple of weeks ago, which was really fun. And then the third article was about there was this restaurant here in Boston that went super viral because of the way that the owner, responded to someone who canceled a reservation. And it went super mega viral on Twitter. And so we wrote about that. And then, at the bottom, we also did a couple of small little news things about how, like, one of them was how the price of agave has fallen so much that no one knows. Boston doesn't have good food. That's not true. It's just not a eatery destination like other big cities. It doesn't mean that there's no good food. Do I think it's lacking? Sure. But it's not horrible. It's not bad. Boston's pretty great. It's just not this. It's not on par with other major cities like New York. And I could get into it, but it's like a whole mafia kind of controls the food beverage scene in Boston. It's kind of weird. But anyway, the whole point is the newsletter is not just some gimmick where I'm just trying to get you guys to just me to sell you something. It's for the community. It's for people. And so I'll be asking for you to subscribe to the newsletter. You can always unsubscribe after if you don't like it. And this week, if you guys follow me for Tequila News, this week we cover a really big topic in the newsletter about it. And it's literally, as Frank Talley's asking, what's happening with the CRT and Tequila Matchmaker. That's actually what the article this week in the newsletter is. So I would subscribe if you want to know. There's a lot that is happening, and then that'll come out in the newsletter this week. And then I will be picking the 5 finalists for the cocktail competition. I'll be making those cocktails in a video and announcing the winner of the $500. If you want to win $500 from me, myself, I'm going to be sending it to you. Subscribe to my newsletter. It's on my Instagram links. I will also put it in the comments of this video. So if you're watching this after the fact, or if you're watching it now and come back, it's going to be in the first comment. I'll pin it on YouTube. But yeah, anyway, friends, thank you very much for being on here on the live. Let me know if you guys are enjoying this. If there's other topics that you want me to cover in this. There's a lot of times where you guys ask me to cover the same topics because you maybe haven't seen it or you didn't really look through my video catalog, but there are certain things I'm just not going to talk about anymore. There's things that, like, if every single time I came live or made a video I talked about the exact same thing, you know how boring that would be? So just instead of asking me all the time about where you can find a certain spirit, I don't know. I can't. I'm not Google. I'm not your liquor store in your city. Liquor laws are very different from state to state, from city to city. Use Google. I'm not Google. But yeah, that's one that I just won't cover. Anyway, but ask me down below whatever you guys. If you guys have ideas for a live, let me know, and we can see what we do next. I might go live again this week because I'll be gone all next week, so I might just do 2 lives this week My goal is to always do one. It may be Wednesday, it may be Thursday. So I don't know. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Subscribe to the newsletter. I have a writer, and I can't wait to be building that community. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go now because my mouth is getting very dry, and I still have some content I have to make today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, cheers. Be well.